No, that's fine.
Yeah, let me there it is. Oops. Okay. Get that on there. Okay, and checking connection always.
Always, I know it's never ending.
All right, we're live. Yay.
Awesome. Okay,
Awesome. Cool.
I am ready. So, what are we making today?
So, if you're watching on Instagram Live, if you're watching this after the fact, I'm here with Diksha from Food Pleasure Health. She has an amazing food blog. She's always cooking up some yummy stuff. And you may know her from How and Diksha doing the dumpling pop-ups around town. And you do classes at the table too, right?
We're doing virtual right now.
Yeah, so they do a lot of fun virtual classes at the table. I love that place. It's super fun. I got some dumplings there earlier in, I think it was this year, late last year maybe. I got some. But yeah, super fun place. But we are going to do this on Instagram Live, and then also we're doing it on Zoom. If you signed up for the Zoom class, you can have the better quality version of this class going on. But yeah, so let me make sure that I got this going and then I'm on the right account. Cool, cool, cool. So today we're going to be making two things. I'm going to be showing you how to do something, and Diksha's going to be showing you how to do something if you're in the Zoom class. So I'm going to be showing you how to make a pear galette. This is one of my favorite things to make in the fall because, don't tell anybody, but it's actually super easy to make. And but it looks really pretty, and it looks like it was super complicated. It only takes a few ingredients. Most people have what you need to make the dough at home all the time, and it really doesn't take long to throw it together, but it's a really elegant thing. I eat it for breakfast all the time, which maybe is unhealthy, but I don't care. It's delicious for breakfast. But you can.
Fruit.
It's fruit, yeah. It's
and
like
eggs.
exactly.
There's butter, there's dairy.
I think it's maybe not the healthiest, but not the unhealthiest choice. But it's winter time, it's fall time, so I don't care. This is when I eat whatever I want, and then I'll worry about stuff in January like everybody else. But yeah, we're gonna make that from scratch, and then Diksha's gonna show us how to do what's the name of your recipe again?
It's like spiced, like holiday nuts.
Yeah, so like super tasty. The picture looks amazing. I love just like snacking on nuts in the evening time, especially a lot of times like on Christmas Eve. Me and my family anyway, like we don't do like a really heavy meal because we know we're gonna eat a lot on Christmas Day, like Christmas afternoon. And so Christmas Eve, a lot of times we just eat like nuts and cheese and do like a little charcuterie before it was like vogue to do that, but we just do like a very simple version of that. And so I love that you picked that recipe because it sounds really, really good. So we're gonna be making both of those things tonight. And yeah, so I guess we'll get started with the dough first.
All right, so what do we need?
So you do not have to have a food processor to make this. You can definitely do it by hand. All you need is a bowl and a fork. I like to do it in the food processor because it takes 0 time, and since I have one, I'm going to use it.
Same.
Favorite thing to use. It's just going to be flour, butter, sugar, and salt. So super, super easy. I like to weigh everything out, my ingredients, instead of using cup measurements. I did send a recipe that has the cup measurements. I just got used to weighing everything out because that's how most bakers do it. Not only in other countries, but too, that's kind of the way of doing it. So I like using the scale. This one is one that just has a rechargeable battery, which is super nice. So I just always have it ready. And so
I'm ready.
I'm just gonna zero out my scale, and then first thing we're gonna put in there is gonna be our flour. So just regular AP flour, and we're gonna do 200 grams.
200, all right.
Get that in there. And this recipe is so simple. You'll find lots of different versions for kind of this simple dough. You can use it as a pie crust. You can use it to make your galette. You can use it for a lot of things. And this is just one way of doing it, but this is the way I like to do it. All right, so I got my 200 grams of flour. I'm going to zero that out.
Okay.
And I'm going to do 13 grams of sugar.
13, all right.
And so I always just do it right into.
Yeah, I like weighing everything too. It's so much more accurate.
It's so much better, and it's so easy too. And you don't have to have like a bunch of extra bowls or things that you're, you know, having to clean up afterwards. You can do it all in the same bowl.
All right, so I got my sugar.
Okay, and then with the salt, you really don't have to weigh it. I usually just do 2 heavy pinches. It usually comes out to about 2 to 3 grams of salt if you do want to measure it. But
So the butter I'm using is salted butter, so I'm not going to add any salt, okay?
Perfect, and that's a great point. So if you're on live and you could, Diksha's saying that she's using salted butter, so she's not going to add any salt to our dough. That's great. I always use unsalted butter, so I am going to add a little bit of salt in here. And I've got my butter in the refrigerator. Pull that out real quick. And you do want to keep the butter cold until you're ready to use it. So that's why I have it in the fridge. All right, so you might be thinking, this looks dirty. That's because I made one earlier. So that's why there's stuff in my food processor. But I'm gonna go ahead and add in all my dry ingredients. I'm gonna save this bowl because we're gonna mix the fruit in it later. I'm a big fan of less cleanup whenever possible, especially now because it's just me in the house. So I'm not at a restaurant where I can have someone else wash dishes for me. I gotta do it all myself. Yeah. And I'm just gonna pulse this a couple of times just to mix up all of our dry ingredients.
How much butter was that, Natalia? I think I missed that.
So we're gonna do a total of 10 tablespoons of butter.
Okay, 10 tablespoons. Do you have that in grams?
It comes out to usually around like 140.
140, okay.
Yes. So I'm just gonna do that real quick here. One, 2, 3, 4, 5. Save that for later. Same with this one. And then let me measure it real quick, or weigh it, and just see where I'm at here. Yeah, 141, perfect.
All right, I got it. Okay.
And then if you're doing this by hand, I usually tell people to do half the butter at a time because it's going to take a little bit if you're doing it by hand to work all the butter into the dough. Oh, let's see, we got a couple of questions on here. Let's see what's going on. What's up, everybody? Saludos, Roy. No estoy haciendo tlayudas. Estamos haciendo una tarta.
Okay, so are we adding the butter into our food processor now?
So what we're going to do is we're going to, let me adjust this camera so we can see a little bit better. I'm going to cube up the butter. And so I'm just going to cut it in half and then turn it over, cut it again. So we have these 4 pieces like this. And then we're just going to cut it into little cubes about this size.
Okay.
Going up to this camera so we can see a little better. So just nice little cubes. And try to get them as close to the same size as possible, but it doesn't have to be perfect. All right. And then once we have all of our butter, and again, if you're doing this by hand, keep half of your butter in the refrigerator so it stays nice and cold. But if you're doing it in here, we're just going to add it all at once. And the reason that we want to keep the butter cold is when we incorporate it into the dough, we don't want it to melt. And this is going to help give us a nice, really flaky, tender dough when we go to bake it. Because you're going to have all these little tiny thin pieces of butter that are incorporated into the dough. And that's what gives you that really nice, just buttery, flaky texture.
Right. Butter is almost ready. Butter is so sticky. Oh my God, I didn't realize it was this buttery and sticky.
Yeah, it does get really sticky sometimes.
Yeah, it's sticking to my knife. It's literally sliding, and I've never had this before. So
I always have little bits of butter left on my knife, but it's okay. They'll wipe off into the pears when we get to that. So.
all right. Butter.
And then, like while Disha's cutting up her butter, like I was saying, if you want to do this by hand, you'll just put everything in the bowl, and you'll take a fork, and you're just gonna mash it in there, and you're just gonna keep mashing it into your bowl until you get only tiny little pieces of butter left, like no bigger than a pea. Then you'll add in the rest of your butter, keep working it in. You can use your hands a little bit to kind of smush out those bigger pieces of butter, but you want to use your hands as least as possible because the heat from your hands is going to melt that butter, and we want to keep it nice and cold. So if you are doing it by hand, try to use your fork as much as possible, and when you're mixing it all together, and that's going to give you a better result in the end.
Okay.
All right, so we both got our butters ready to go.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just gonna turn this on, and we're just gonna drop in 1 or 2 pieces at a time.
Are you using your pulse function, or are you using?
For this step, when I'm adding it in, I just leave it on and just drop them 1 at a time.
Okay.
And the texture that we're gonna be looking for is it's gonna look like a coarse meal when it's done, and you'll recognize it when you see it. It'll change color a little bit. It'll look a little bit yellowish from the butter, which is cool.
There.
Adding them, you'll see it start to change in appearance too. ¿Qué onda, amigo? ¿Cómo estás? Saludos. All right.
All right. So it becomes more like a coarse, like a cornmeal texture. Is that right?
Yes. So I'm going to show you exactly what we're looking for. Also a few more times. I'm going to use my fork to pull this out because I don't want it to melt in my hands. But go to this camera first. You're going to get this.
Okay. I think I'm almost there.
Yeah, this kind of coarse texture. This is kind of what it's going to look like. I'm going to blend it a few more times just to get it a little bit more fine. But you see all that butter getting worked into the flour? That's what we're looking for. So a few more times and then we're good to go with this. Especially once clump together on one side and spin around, that's pretty much when you're ready to add in just a little bit of water. Now, ideally, you'll have some water either in the freezer or the fridge that's nice and cold. If you forgot that step, just get the coldest water you can. And we're just going to add in a little bit of water, a teaspoon at a time. Usually, for me, I'll do 5 to 10 teaspoons. It doesn't take a whole lot. And this time, I'm just going to pulse it a little bit. Add 1 teaspoon. If it gets stuck a little bit, that's okay. So 2. You can kind of use your fork to break it up a little bit if you need to. On this side.
It is forming together into a dough. I see it.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly what I want to see. Let's do 3. Let's do 4. And we'll do 1 more. Okay. So what we're going to end up with is, oh, we got Mike. What's up, Mike? Mike's in the chat. Let me take this out. And you'll see it's already kind of looking like a dough. So this is
Mine is looking like this. So I hope this is what we're looking for.
Take a look and see. Yes.
Okay.
You can go ahead and what I like to do is put a little bit of flour just so it doesn't stick onto my cutting board.
Okay.
And we'll just reach in there, get all of the dough out. There'll be a little bit stuck in there, that's fine. So here. And I'm just gonna, it's gonna be a little bit sticky. That's where we have some flour on there. That's okay if it's a little bit sticky. We don't want to work it too hard, but I do want to just make sure that it all comes together. But we want to work it as little as possible. Okay, until it comes together like this. And so it should be a nice solid dough.
Okay.
You'll see that. All right. And then once we have that, get this out the way. Secret towel under there. We're just gonna grab some plastic wrap here. Yes, Mike says he likes the food processor method better than by hand. I totally agree. It's so much faster. I use my food processor for a lot of different things too, so it comes in handy. And so we're just gonna get a little sheet of plastic wrap and we're gonna kind of put it in the shape that we want. So like a little square. We're just gonna wrap it up nice and tight, like this. Okay, and then once we have it wrapped up, I'm gonna take my rolling pin and I'm just gonna press it into the corners so that we get a lot of that air out. To this little square or rectangle. And this is gonna help us when we go to roll it out later. Okay, so then what you should be left with is something like this. Okay, so it's nice and tight, so it fits into all those corners. And I usually label mine so that I know what time I put it down to rest, because we were talking about this before we started the video. We're always doing like 100 different things, and so I like to keep up with it. So I'm just gonna write 3 p.m. And if you guys don't have painter's tape in your kitchen and label everything with painter's tape, then let me tell you, you should be doing that. Super helpful. Okay, how's yours looking, Diksha?
It's looking fine. You be the judge. I think
Let's see. Oh, yay! That looks awesome.
the dough feels really good, but I've never made this, so I don't know if this is what it should be.
Perfect. Beautiful. It looks so good. Andrés Franco, saludos, colombiano. Okay, so then we're gonna put that into the fridge.
Okay.
I like to let it go for at least an hour. You can do it up to overnight.
Okay.
You can really kind of do it however. And then once you let it rest, you want to pull it out of the fridge. Usually it takes about 15-20 minutes to come up to room temperature before you start rolling it out. But because this is a cooking class and it is a magical time, I have one that's already ready that we're going to use. But before we do that, I'm just going to show you the pears really quick. We're going to do those. So I've got my pears here. We're going to be using Bosc pears. Is that how you say it? Bosc pears? Who knows? That's what I say.
Other kinds of pears, or does it have to be the specific kind? I have the Bosc pear, but I was just curious.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be Bosc pears. Bosc pears work really well for baking because they are they're not as soft as some of the other pears, and so when you bake them, they hold up a little better. They still have a little bite to them, and they're not going to be as mushy as some of the other pears. So if you have a pear that's kind of like an eating pear, what we call them, or what I call them, those are going to come out really, really soft after you bake them.
That makes sense.
But if you have like a poaching pear or a baking pear like this one, you're going to have just a crunchier texture. And so I'm just going to cut off the little end pieces, and then I'm going to cut it in half. And then I'm going to take the core out. You don't have to have a melon baller. I usually just use a measuring spoon.
Yeah, I was gonna do the same thing.
A measuring spoon or a knife, doesn't really matter. With if you're using like a measuring spoon, you do get a nicer shape. Sometimes I just hack at it with a knife though. Whatever works for you, works for you. Okay, so we're gonna have them like this. So this is what we're trying to get, our nice little pear halves here. And then we're just gonna cut them into about probably like 1/2 inch size strips. So this is kind of the thickness that we're gonna want for this. So you can kind of see the light go through it, but you still have a nice little white left. And I like to try to make these pieces as uniform as possible, because when we go to layer before we bake, you'll get just these really nice uniform shapes, and it makes a really pretty presentation when you go to bake it.
So I'm done coring them. So what size did you say? I think I completely.
Yeah, so about 1/2 inch.
Okay, so thinly sliced.
Yeah, so nice, just thinly sliced. And then I like this thickness is kind of good because it's going to get soft in the oven, but it's not going to get super mushy. You're still going to have a little texture left there. And then I usually just, in the same bowl that I measured everything in, toss them all in there. Let's see, Victor said, y los tacos, hermano, los tacos en la noche, güey. Ya sabes. And these pears are pretty big, so I'm just gonna start with 2 and see if that gets me where I need to go. But this also, I like to eat it cold, honestly, and so sometimes I'll just make it the day before I need it. But if you want to have it warm, you can also just reheat the whole thing in the oven pretty easily. It comes together really quickly. Oops. I love pears. You can also use apples for this. I've done galettes with blueberries. You can do it with really any kind of fruit that you want, honestly, and it'll be about the same. But I just love pears. I don't know why. Just always like them. I don't know, just very, very pretty. Feels like fall. They have a nice flavor. And then depending on the kind of pear too, you can peel them. You can take the skin off before you bake them if you want. I don't mind the skin. I kind of like it. So I often leave them on. But that's up to you. If you're doing apples, probably peel them first though. Some people don't like it, or they don't like the way that it looks. So it's kind of your personal preference. I'm gonna leave them on today because I don't feel like peeling them. And I forgot to peel them. Another important thing, but I think they look fine. I like having a little bit of skin on there. So once we have our pears here in the bowl,
Not mine.
then we're gonna add in our spices and our sugar. So I already put everything just into this little cup, but it's gonna be 1/4 a cup of brown sugar. If you don't have brown sugar, you can use just granulated white sugar as well. And then it's gonna be a teaspoon of ground nutmeg, a teaspoon of allspice, and then a tablespoon or 2 tablespoons of ground cinnamon, just depending on how much cinnamon you actually want to put in there.
I have like pumpkin pie spice, so I'm just gonna use that. So
Perfect, yeah. So this is using pumpkin pie spice. It has all the same flavors that we want in there.
yeah.
And then I'm gonna add a teaspoon of vanilla extract. This is also optional, but I like it. Adds a little extra flavor. And then I'm also gonna add, you can use a lemon. Usually pies traditionally use lemons. I like limes. Anytime I can sub out limes, I like the flavor a little bit better. I think it goes really well with the fruit. And so before I squeeze all the juice in, I am just gonna put a little bit of the zest in there, just to give it a little bit more lime flavor. Again, this is just for your personal preference. I really, really like this flavor combination. And so I'm gonna add it in there. You can always just use the juice, or you can also do this with a lemon. I'm not gonna do the whole thing. That should be fine, just like that.
It already smells so good.
I know. Sometimes it's hard for me not to just eat all the fruit out of the bowl.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking right now. It already smells so good.
So I'm just gonna squeeze all of this lime juice in there. Oh my God, this has to be one of the best smells that exists.
I think vanilla adds a nice, really nice flavor too with the brown sugar and pear. It's this. I could just eat this and be like, all right, bye guys.
Honestly, I usually make a little bit more filling than I need, and I'll just snack on it while I'm waiting on everything to go. All right. And then where did I put my fork? There it is. And then I'm just gonna give this a little toss, and I just want to get everything coated. And the lime juice is also going to help keep our pears from turning brown, so it's going to keep them from oxidizing. And if it looks a little dry, just because that lime was a little bit small, you can add another one, which is what I'm going to do. It depends on how juicy your fruit is too, because sometimes, especially with apples, they don't need quite as much liquid. Hola, Damián Lavarere, mi fan número uno. All right, just gonna squeeze all this in here.
So good. Mine is already tossed. I've snacked on 1 or 2 slices and we're done.
Oh my gosh, it's so good. You can also, one thing I do if I make too much of this is you can just take this kind of seasoned fruit and you can put it in your oatmeal in the morning, and it tastes really good that way too. So definitely, if you have extras, don't throw it out. There's lots of ways you can use it. And then, of course, you know, you got to taste test and make sure it tastes good.
Of course.
Kind of amazing. You can't go wrong. So simple. Okay. So, now we have this. Okay, so like I said, if you're kind of baking along with us, you do want to let your dough rest a little bit before you use it. But like I said, I have one that I made a little bit earlier, so I can show you guys the rest of this process.
Do we need to preheat our oven or anything?
Yes, so if you're gonna bake along, go ahead and get it to 425 degrees.
Okay.
I'm just gonna put this over. Put the towel here. Okay. And then I'm just gonna flour this surface a little bit. And then and then you'll want to kind of just hang it a little bit. It's going to help soften it up before you roll it. And then we're just going to start rolling it out. And so the way that I was taught to roll stuff out, and with this one, I'm going to kind of make a big rectangle. So a lot of times people just kind of roll back and forth aggressively, and that's not the best way to do it. You kind of want to start in the center and roll out, and then start at the center roll back, rotate it, and kind of do that motion. If you're going to be doing a circular pie, then you want to think of it like a clock, and then you'll roll out this way, give it a little turn, roll out this way, give it a little turn, and just kind of keep going in a circle. But you want to kind of avoid this aggressive just back and forth motion as much as possible. And that's going to give you a more even dough. And so the thickness that we're looking for here is about, probably about 1/2 inch too, so similar to the thickness of the pears. Now let's talk about troubleshooting some dough. So it's pretty normal to get some cracks on the sides. If you can just kind of push them together and they stick back together, then you can do that for sure. If it's a really, really big crack, then your dough might be a little bit too dry. If you're just like really battling with getting it to roll out and it just is not working and you just have these big cracks, it's probably a little too dry. And so what you can do is take a little spray bottle. Mine's fine, so I don't want to spray it, but I'm just going to spray in front of the camera. And you just want to mist a little bit of water on it, fold it back up, mist it again, put it back in the fridge for another maybe 30 minutes, and you just want to bring a little bit more hydration into that dough, and you can totally save it and it will absolutely be fine. And then just pull it back out in about 30 minutes, and it should be a lot more elastic. But the great thing about doing a galette is it does kind of have a little bit more of a rustic appearance like we were talking about. And so it doesn't have to be perfect. It can have some edges that are a little bit on the rougher side. And it's not going to hurt anything. That's kind of what it's supposed to look like. So this is a really good kind of entry level if you're not super experienced baker and you want to kind of try your hand at making some of this stuff. This is a really fun way to get started. All right, looking good. How's it coming, Diksha?
It's going well. I don't know if I'm getting the square rectangle shape, but it's not cracking as much and it's getting there.
Hey, as long as it's A shape, you can work with it. Doesn't really matter. All right, so mine is about the thickness that I want it to be. Again, I'm not super concerned with the shape. I just want it to kind of be a little bit even, so you can kind of, if you have some sides that are too thick, go back in with your rolling pin and just kind of roll out those individual little parts that are giving you issues, and you can kind of redirect the shape a little bit. All right. So mine is the shape that I want it. I don't know if you guys can see. So this is kind of the thickness that we want. I don't want to pick it up too much because it might break, but it's about probably about a 1/2 inch thick as well. Let me tilt this camera down so you guys can see a little bit better. There we go. And so, like I said, I'm not super concerned with these edges because I'm just going to fold them over anyway. If you have a really big crack like right here, I'm just going to kind of press it together and it'll totally be fine. You can do a lot of dough healing at this point and you will never know in the end. Okay, so once you have that ready, you're going to take your baking sheet. And then I usually spray the corners. That's going to keep my parchment paper stuck down on top. Now, technically, you don't need to spray this parchment paper because there's quite a bit of fat in the dough since it's mainly butter. But I like to, just for good measure, give it a little spray just in case. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to transfer this onto our sheet here. Now, it's important that you build your fruit topping on the tray, okay? Because I've made the mistake when I was first making these, I built everything out on the cutting board, and then when it came time to transfer it onto the tray for baking, everything kind of fell through the bottom. So don't do that. Make sure you put everything onto your tray before you get started. Oh, awesome. My oven is preheated. And then, especially if you're starting out, I like to kind of map out where my filling is going to go. So I have these kind of rustic edges, and I want to leave about an inch or so, inch and a half around the shape. And so I'll just kind of take a skewer or my knife, don't cut all the way through, but just kind of score a very thin line of where your fruit is going to go. And that way you don't go past that line when you go to fold it. So I'm just going to draw my little rectangle here. Doesn't have to be perfect. It's just a little guideline for you. Again, totally optional, but I found it helpful when I was starting out. So you can definitely do that. And then this is the fun part. We get to lay out the fruit. Now, obviously, if you're doing something like blueberries or just fruit that doesn't really matter, you can really just pile it on there. You can just pile these on there if you want to. Doesn't matter. But because we have these nice little shapes, this is when I like to take a little time and just lay them out single file and just make a really pretty design. So this is the kind of the part where you can have a lot of fun. And so that's how I'm going to do it, just starting at the beginning of my line. And I'm going to do them all facing the same way. Like
overlap
this.
a little bit, or?
Yeah, so you want to overlap just a little bit. Not too far.
Okay.
Because then it starts to get a little too thick. But yeah, just a little bit of overlap. Like this. And then you can kind of use the little end pieces to fill in any of those gaps. If you have some big gaps, I like to take those little end pieces and put those down, just so I'm not seeing a whole lot of just empty space with the dough. And then I'm going to overlap again just a little bit. I'm just going to do, it's probably going to end up being about 3 rows total.
Yeah, mine is getting to be about 3 also, I think, yeah.
Perfect, yeah. It'll depend on the size of your pears. The last one I made, I had teeny tiny pears, and so I think it was 4 rows, but usually it's going to be about 3 for one this size. Now you can also, if you're doing this for a pie, you can make this dough in advance. You can actually par bake it into the pan that you're going to use, and it'll be a similar baking process, and you already have that crust kind of ready to go. All right, I'm just going to add a few more of these little pieces at the top, and then I'll be ready to fold it over.
This is so therapeutic. Oh my God, I just don't want to talk to anyone.
No, it's so relaxing. I just get caught up in like the design of it, and I love it. It's so fun. And see, I have a lot of leftover pears, and I only did 2 of them, and so I'll definitely be snacking on these later. Okay, and then once you have, I'm just gonna kind of show you guys what it looks like here so far. You can kind of see that.
I'm
nice
almost.
layers. Ta-da, ta-da. Like this. Super fun. Okay, so there, once you have that, you're gonna just very gently, I like to start in the corner, and you're just gonna pull it up over the top, and then you're going to pull the next piece over like so, and it kind of folds over itself on the corners so that you can keep folding around in the shape that you want, and it gives these nice little pretty, almost like pleats, I guess. And if a corner breaks a little bit, that's totally fine. Just kind of pat the dough down like this, and then our last one like this, and like this. So like I said, this is kind of a little bit more casual, excuse me, a little bit more rustic. And so I like having these little edges. If you wanted to make it super fancy, you could definitely trim up those edges, excuse me, before you go to fold it. And if you want to have it, I really like the way that it looks like this. I think it's very fun. And I like rustic stuff. I think rustic can be very elegant. All right, we got that. And then I'm just gonna do a quick little egg wash. So let me find my eggs. And the egg wash is just going to be the egg, and then I'm just going to put a little pinch of salt in there. And then I'm going to do a little pinch of just granulated sugar in there as well.
You're doing just one egg?
Yeah, just one egg will be more than enough for this. And then we're just going to do that. And then before I put this on, if you took a few minutes to put all this stuff down and the dough feels really, really, really soft, before you put your egg wash on, you can actually pop this whole thing in your freezer for about 5 or 10 minutes. And that will make sure that everything sets up and the butter doesn't leach out when you go to bake it. Mine feels okay, so I think it'll be fine. Famous last words when doing this. But if it feels like it's a little too soft, you can definitely pop it into the freezer before you bake it. I'll make sure you.
I'm gonna do that. I think mine is feeling a little bit soft because it didn't get a chance to set. So I'm gonna leave it in the freezer while we clean up and get ready for the other one. So
perfect. Yeah, well, we'll do it. We'll do it together. How about that? We'll both put it in there while we get started on yours. And then really all you're gonna do is, before you put it in there, just take your brush and you're gonna brush the egg. And we'll put it in there, get everything cleaned up, ready for yours, and then we'll pop it in the oven and do recipe number 2. Now the fun part is trying to fit this in the freezer. There we go. Let's save this. I'm gonna clean up my little area here. Let's see, 1 or 2 layers of fruit. I did 3 rows of fruits, but just a single layer. If that is what you were asking, I think. 1 layer each row overlapping, exactly. All right, clean this up real quick. And if you're watching, if you signed up and you're in the Zoom class, Liksha has a really cool, she has their camera set up so you can see from the other angle, which I love in cooking videos because it makes things a little bit simpler. All right. Do that. out. All right. And then when we do go to bake our galette, when we get that out of the freezer and we pop it in, it's going to go at 425 for about 10 minutes. And then after 10 minutes, we're just going to lower the temperature down to 350. And it's going to keep baking at 350 for about 30, 40 minutes, just depending. You want to keep an eye on it, rotate it maybe once as we are baking it, just to make sure that it's nice and even. And whenever you're baking anything, I always tell people it's super important to know your oven. And one of the best ways to kind of see if there's hot spots in your oven is to take a sheet pan like the one that we're using, or just a sheet of aluminum foil, put your oven on 350, butter some white bread and just lay them all out flat, and then just make toast in the oven. And then as it's toasting, you'll be able to see if there's any dark spots or light spots. And it kind of just gives you a visual map of what your oven is doing in there. And so most ovens have a hot spot. The more you bake, the more you'll know. You know, I know the back left corner of my oven is a little bit hotter than other parts of it. And then another oven that I used to use at work, they had, you know, the right back corner was the hot spot. And so the more you bake, the more you'll know. And it just makes it a little easier. But if you want to know, you can do that. You can also just take a thermometer, put it in there, make sure your oven is actually reading the temperature that you set it to. And you can also just kind of move it around and see where those hot spots are if you don't want to use the bread method. But either way will work. Let me get all my stuff ready here. I'm so excited about this recipe, because it sounds so tasty. Say what?
Have you made like spiced nuts or anything similar to this before?
I have made something similar with pecans, because so I grew up in Mississippi, and we do like spiced pecans or like butter pecans that just have like a lot of, they're almost like, we do candied pecans too that are super sweet with like a lot of brown sugar and butter, and it's a little simpler. But I've also had like spiced pecans, and I really like those. So I like this recipe because it has more than just one.
Yeah, and I like doing this just because, you know, it's a great way for me to use all the spices that I have.
Yeah.
And then just use whatever nuts. Generally, like, I mean, you can do this recipe in the oven, but since we're going to bake it, I thought let's just try a small batch and on our stove top, because, you know, you can just make it for yourself. This also makes a lovely gift if you are, you know, into edible gift and such. So I'm just using cashews and almonds today. You can use, you know, pecans, walnuts. I wouldn't use like pine nuts or anything, just because they're so small. They're not going to cook evenly. So use nuts about like the same size, so they don't,
Okay.
you know, they cook at the same time. And then you can and then you're going to need, you know, some sort of fat. I'm just using ghee. You can do butter, but I would mix a little bit of oil if you're using butter by itself, just because it just tends to burn a little bit faster. You can also do coconut oil if you have, and then you can, you know, and then this is when you can really take it whatever way you want. I like to make it a little sweet and spicy. So I'm adding a little bit of honey. You can also do brown sugar if you don't have honey, or if you want to just make it, you know, plant-based or vegan. And then spices. You know, I'm using this spice blend called Garam Masala. So this has all the warming spices. I mean, so it has cardamom, which is one of my favorites. Like, I want cardamom and everything. Like cloves, nutmeg, black peppercorn, bay leaves, and cinnamon. You can choose, you know, whatever spices. I also like to add a little bit of paprika. So I'm just going to add that for a little bit of smokiness. And again, pumpkin pie, this is like my go-to spices for the fall, because I don't have to buy individual spices. So doing that. Rosemary is a nice addition if you want to add little herbaceous notes. What else? I mean, I like to just do sweet and spicy. Just use a little bit of honey or brown sugar and whatever warming spices I can find.
Okay, yeah.
What spices are you using?
So I'm going to use, I also have, where I just had it, the cardamom. I'm going to do a little bit of allspice because I like that one. And then I'm glad you mentioned garam masala because I have some. I'm going to grab that because I love that spice. I think it will go really well.
Check the garam masala, see if he has like cumin, coriander. Just check the blend because all garam masala is going to be very different. You don't want, you know, a turmeric or coriander in there probably if you are doing allspice. It might be too much. So check the blend to see what we have.
Yeah, that's a really good tip. I'm going to grab that really quick.
Okay.
Oh, well, I think I'm out of it. So I'm just going to go with the allspice, maybe a little bit of nutmeg, and the cardamom, and maybe a little cinnamon.
Wonderful. You can add a little chili powder if you want to make it spicy. I'm sure you have that.
Okay. Yeah, I like a little sweet, spicy.
Yeah. So, let's see. And one thing I have learned from doing this is don't add the ground spices in the beginning because the ground spices tend to burn really fast. So we're gonna wait to add our spices a little bit towards the end. So
Okay.
I'm going to start by adding like, you know, about half a tablespoon of ghee. You can do whatever cooking oil you're using. So
Okay.
adding that.
I'm gonna do a little butter for mine because I don't have any ghee, but I need to get some more. I need to make some.
Smells so good.
Ghee is one of my favorite ingredients to use. It's so tasty.
What do you normally cook with it?
I'll use it when I'm doing like toasting spices and stuff first, like anything that I want to bloom, just because it has that higher smoke point.
Yeah.
Also, like I've used it for like cooking a steak or something like that, just to add that nice little like nutty, fatty flavor to it. But yeah, it's tasty for sure. But yeah, lots of spice blooming, and then I really like it on steak, honestly.
Yeah. All right. So once it heats up for like, you know, couple of minutes, I don't want it to like start smoking or anything. I'm going to add my nuts.
Nuts in there.
What are you doing for nuts?
So I'm using cashews, walnuts, and almonds.
Oh. Going to, you know, just stir everything, make sure it's coated with ghee or butter. We're going to let this cook for just a little bit, and then I'm going to add my brown sugar. Sometimes I do honey, but today, since I have honey too, but I'm gonna do brown sugar today. So.
And if you're using honey, how much honey should I use?
Just drizzle about like a tablespoon.
Okay.
doing about, since, I mean, I'm just using a cup of, total nuts, so you can gauge it. And then brown sugar is in.
There's some honey on here.
Going to let the brown sugar melt just a little bit.
Okay.
I used to make this and give as a gift for my coworkers.
Oh, yeah.
So
It smells so good right now. I love the smell.
And then the best place, I mean, I live really close to Central Market, so I just go to the bulking section and just, buy all these nuts. So
Yes, that's exactly what I did. I love that because I can just buy, $1's worth of,
yeah,
nuts if I want to make just a little bit, or I can buy a bunch of them.
exactly.
Central Market is a great resource.
It's starting to caramelize a little bit, so this is when I'm going to add a little bit of salt.
Okay.
Nice pinch, and then I'm going to add my ground spices. And, you can keep an eye on the heat and then decide if you need to lower it if it's starting to smoke. So.
Well, we're just kind of eyeballing these spices, right?
I usually just go heavy just because I like all the spices, but you can, pick and choose.
We're gonna go for it. I'm gonna put lots in.
Oh yeah.
That feels so good. Oh my goodness.
I forgot to tell you, but if you have like a baking sheet or something, you can probably get it so that we can, let it cool down.
Yes.
And this is, if you were doing like rosemary, if you're doing like other herbs, you can, this is a good place to add. So it doesn't burn, but still imparts that flavor.
Yes, I went and stole some rosemary from the side of the road before I.
Oh my God. Yeah, I was so tempted to do that yesterday on my walk, but I didn't want to be that person carrying like.
Oh, I was that person. I don't care.
I don't blame you. I was almost going to be that person. I do that for mint. By next to like table, there is this huge bush, like mint bush. I always go and steal it. I'm just borrowing.
I mean,
there.
yeah, I mean, there was a huge bush. Like they didn't need all of that. I definitely pretended like I was tying my shoe and just snagged the branch.
Yeah.
But hey, you do what you got to do. I forgot to get some at the store, so it smells really good. So I'm gonna add
All
some
the
of this.
spices are cooked. This is caramelized. I'm going to transfer it into my baking sheet.
Okay.
And then we're just gonna let it cool, and then it's ready. I mean.
Oh my gosh, I love that. I love that it's it has such like a really wonderful like aroma that just kind of fills the house, and it's so easy to do. This is a great recipe.
It's so flexible. You can, pick and choose what herbs, what spices, what nuts, and then that's pretty much it. And you can again, go lower on the sweetness if you want, go up your spices, whatever you like. So yeah.
And it's so pretty too, and it feels very elegant and like rich. I'm just gonna put them back on this plate and wait.
I'm gonna add a little bit more salt, I think.
Okay.
Then we're just going to let this cool off, and it's ready. I mean, once it cools off, I usually put it in like a mason jar or like some sort of airtight container, and it's ready.
Oh, so good. I'm gonna add just a tiny bit more salt too. It's delicious. Hola, Cesar, papi chulo. I keep seeing people sign in on the live. It's super fun. See everybody on there. Look at these. Look at this. Gorgeous.
We have snacks, we have dessert and breakfast. Where's that?
Yes. Oh my gosh. Look at this. It's so pretty. I love this.
Oh, yeah, I love that.
It's so good. I know we're supposed to let it cool, but I just keep eating it hot.
Yeah, I kind of burned my tongue doing that, so don't be me.
Wow. Okay.
Alright, should we put our galette in the oven?
Yes. Let's do it. The time has come. If you have been keeping up, we have our,
We need to egg wash it, so
yes, so we had our oven is already preheated. We just set this in the freezer for a little bit, just to make sure that it sets up nice when we go to bake it. I'm gonna,
yeah, this changes so much. Mine, like, yeah, this was
yeah, it
great.
feels really different. So then we're just gonna do a nice little egg wash on here. And this is gonna give you a really pretty color when you go to bake it. So you wanna get in all those little cracks. And then if you have the really thick crystal sugar, the demerara sugar, you can sprinkle a little bit of that on top too if you want to. Kind of like a lot of people do it on scones if you've had that kind of crunchy sugar on top. If you have some of that lying around, that tastes really good on here, but you don't have to. I don't have any today, so I'm just gonna skip that. But let's just make sure it's all nice and coated. Beautiful.
Do you have any idea on what to do with the rest of the egg? Because that's always my problem. What do I do with this?
Oh, you know, honestly,
Scramble egg.
if I'm not, yeah, you could like scramble it and just eat it if you just were in the mood for some eggs. I usually don't. I either use it for something else that I'm baking, or honestly, it's just part of one egg, and so I just toss it. I know it's bad. It's so bad, but I do that. I'm not gonna lie to the people. I do just throw it away.
I'm so proud of this. This
It's so pretty. It came out so great. Look at that. Yours looks awesome. This is what this one looks like.
I'm so happy with this. All right. So
Okay, now we're gonna pop it in the oven. And then I always have Alexa, set a timer for 10 minutes.
okay, 10 minutes, and then do we lower it to what, 400?
Yeah, so after 10 minutes, we're actually gonna lower it to 350 degrees. And then it'll go for another probably 30 minutes, 30 to 40 minutes. It just depends. You really are just looking for the pastry being done all the way. And so when it's that nice kind of golden brown color, that's when you can go ahead and pull it out. Thank you, Cesar. He said it looks good. You're always showing me all these delicious pastries that you're making, and I'm jealous. So today I had to make my own. But yeah, it's like I said, probably, rotate it. I usually rotate it after that first 10 minutes. I'll rotate it when I go in to change the temperature, and that way I'm not kind of opening the door over and over again. Because there are some people, I've learned this, there are some people that they're not content looking through the window and they want to constantly be peeking inside. Don't do it. No. Every time you do it, you're making it take longer because then the oven temperature changes, and it's a habit. You gotta stop.
Especially with baking, because I don't bake that much. With cooking, I'm like, it's gonna work out. With baking, I'm never confident. I'm always like, is this even going to work? So I look around and I can't see sometimes. So I am that person who's always peeking, and
You gotta stop doing that. It's bad. It's hard. It's definitely hard. But once you've done it a couple of times, I think. And I think for a lot of people, baking is very intimidating because it's not as easy to figure out what went wrong if something goes wrong.
Once it's in, there's no going back. You know, with cooking, you can
Yeah.
around. Once it's in.
It is fun. I definitely did a lot more baking this year. I think a lot of people did, just being at home a lot more this year. And so I definitely wanted to challenge myself with baking and doing more baking stuff. So I feel much more confident just having practice and like, you know, making some that didn't work out and then like figuring out what you did wrong. And that's why, especially if you're starting with something new, follow the recipe to a T, like don't change anything, do it once exactly the way that it's written. And then after you have it, you can kind of decide like, oh, maybe I want to add a little bit more sugar, or, oh, I didn't really like this recipe, let me try something else. But you don't want to kind of diverge too much from the recipe in the beginning because then it's going to be harder to know like kind of what went wrong. So that's my baking advice. I'm definitely not a master baker by any stretch of the imagination, but I always feel like a badass when I make a galette because it looks so pretty. And I mean, I put it on the gram, it looks great. You know, if you take them to people, they always love them just because it looks really pretty. So it's a nice little easy flex to do. So it's great for holiday stuff.
Yeah. All right. So I'm gonna keep an eye on it, and then I'll send you my picture when it's done.
Yes, absolutely. I'm gonna do the same thing. This was so fun. I'm glad we finally got to do a class together. I super enjoyed it. For everybody watching on live, or if you're watching this video after the fact, you can follow Diksha's food blog. On Instagram, it's at Food Pleasure Health. Is that right? Yes. She's always cooking really, really delicious looking food. I was scrolling through yesterday and it made me super hungry. So she's got a really, really cool food blog. She also does classes, virtual classes with the table here in Fort Worth. So definitely look and see. You already have your calendar up for what, for through January, you were saying, or?
And February. For
January and February. So you can see what classes she's going to be teaching for 2021.
What about you? We want to hear what classes you are teaching in 2021.
I know I haven't made my calendar yet because I'm procrastinating, and it just dawned on me 2 days ago that it's almost Christmas, so I'm a little bit behind. But I'm definitely going to be doing some more online classes. Probably going to be doing the paella class again. We're going to do the pasta making class that a lot of people are asking about. So I want to do some fun new ones too. Maybe for Valentine's Day, do something special. If you want something in particular, let me know, and I can make a class around it for sure. But you follow me on Instagram here at WERO Kitchen, WERO Kitchen. Website's the same. And yeah, feel free to send in, if you're making this galette at home, like send pictures. I love seeing when people make this stuff in class. I love seeing what they come up with. It's super fun to see that, and like rewarding. It's like, oh, they did it. Good teachers. But definitely do that. And yeah, should be a good time. Let me know if you made this, and make sure you keep up with both of us on Instagram, and I hope to see y'all again soon.
Yay! Yeah, I'll send you a picture. It's already starting to smell great, so I can't wait.
Yes, I'm so excited. I can't wait to eat this again for breakfast, probably tomorrow. So.
I'm doing that with vanilla ice cream after it's done.
Yes, you can definitely put whipped cream, ice cream, whatever you want on top.
Yeah.
Great. But
Alrighty, how was
awesome.
Is it not tasting? Mine tastes good too.
Say what?
Did it come out well?
Oh yes, they did. They look really pretty. They're very tasty. I can definitely just snack on these probably the rest of the afternoon, honestly. I don't want to really sit down and eat these, especially when they're warm, like right after you make them. Oh my goodness. So tasty. I'll definitely be making this again for sure.
Yay! Alrighty.
Well, this was fun. Diksha, have a great weekend. You guys all have a great weekend.
I will talk to you soon.
All right. And we'll be posting pictures
of
our finished products here in a minute.
Alrighty, bye.
Awesome. Bye. Bye, everybody.